You've watched the videos, you bought the gear, you planned the perfect project. But here you are, stuck. That familiar cycle of inspiration and planning without starting isn't laziness. It's resistance. It's the secret gatekeeper holding your creative life hostage, and it's time we break the spell with one simple, small action. You've done the work, haven't you? You've scrolled through the endless feeds, soaking up every success story, every stunning landscape shot, and every perfectly edited sequence. You've watched the tutorials until your eyes glazed over. You bought the gear. The sleek camera, the fancy lens, the microphone that promises studio-quality sound. You even signed up for the courses, proudly telling yourself, this is it. This is the quarter I finally do it. I'm going to create. You feel that high, right? That rush of inspiration that comes from seeing what's possible. It's a wonderful electric feeling. You get out your notebook, or maybe you open a new document, and you start planning. You map out the projects you'll tackle, the stories you'll tell, the impact you'll make. The planning phase is so clean, so organized, and so full of promise. In your head, the video is already a masterpiece, the blog post already a viral hit. But then, nothing. The camera stays in the bag. The notebook sits, perfectly clean, on the desk. That electric feeling fades, replaced by a quiet, familiar hum of disappointment. You look around, and honestly, nothing has changed. You're still consuming content, still getting inspired, still planning. But the actual creation part? The part where you move from theory to reality? That remains untouched. It's easy, in that moment, to turn the blame inward. You might think, I must not want it enough, or I'm just lazy, or even, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. You start to believe that the wanting is the problem. But let me tell you something. Your desire to create is fierce, and it's very real. Wanting isn't the obstacle here. What you're caught in is a cycle, a loop. I call it the inspiration treadmill. It's a deceptively comfortable place to be because you're busy. You're constantly doing something. You're researching, you're watching, you're learning, you're optimizing your workflow. You're putting in all the gas, all the effort, but the vehicle never actually leaves the garage. You are on a treadmill of inspiration. You run and run, you feel the exertion, but you never actually cover any ground. The real snag is that this non-starting creates a low-level discomfort. It's the silent anxiety of unfulfilled potential, the slight weight of guilt that settles when you open Netflix instead of your editing software. And here is the cruel, self-perpetuating mechanism of the cycle. The discomfort of never starting feeds straight back into more consumption. Think about it. When you feel bad for not creating, what do you do to solve it? You search for more inspiration. You look for a better tutorial, hoping the next piece of content will finally contain the secret key, the magic bullet that allows you to bypass the hard part. You watch other creators, convincing yourself you need to study their technique more closely. But all you're doing is injecting yourself with more of the very thing that contributed to the problem in the first place. More consumption, more planning, more waiting. This treadmill is essentially a sophisticated distraction machine. It keeps you busy enough to feel productive, but safe enough to avoid the terrifying, vulnerable messiness of actually creating something. We need to stop mistaking preparation for progress. Watching videos and buying gear is preparation. It's necessary, but it's not the destination. If all you do is prepare, you'll stay perpetually at the starting line, a race car with a full tank of gas, but the parking brake's still firmly on. The thing that's keeping that parking brake engaged, the one thing that stops this cycle dead in its tracks, is a surprisingly simple yet deeply entrenched hurdle. It's the invisible force field around your creative endeavors, and it's time we give it a name and shine a light on it, because until we see it, we can't fight it. That gatekeeper, the reason for all the gas and no-go, is resistance. It's not some grand external foe. It's subtle, personal, and masterfully manipulative. It doesn't tell you, stop creating. It just whispers, wait, not yet. You need one more thing. And that waiting is where the magic dies. We're going to talk about exactly what resistance looks like and why it's so hard to spot, because it's the core reason the treadmill keeps spinning. You need to know your enemy to defeat it. So, if you're not lazy, and if you truly want to create, then what is that invisible force holding you back? Why does the inspiration treadmill feel so difficult to step off of? The secret gatekeeper is resistance. It's an enemy that doesn't announce itself with a trumpet blast. It works in the shadows, and its genius lies in the fact that it never ever looks like resistance. It looks like a perfectly logical, completely reasonable reason not to start right now, and it's so uncomfortable that we rarely stop to analyze it. Resistance doesn't come dressed in a villain's cloak. It wears the masks of productivity and practicality. If you've ever said any of the following, you've met resistance face to face. I can't start the video until I buy the new lens. Disguised as need for gear/perfectionism. I need to read one more book on storytelling before I write the first chapter. Disguised as research/learning. I don't have a full uninterrupted 3 hours, so I'll just start tomorrow. Disguised as lack of time. I know my work won't be as good as, so why bother? Disguised as imposter syndrome. There are too many steps. I don't even know where to begin. Disguised as overwhelm. Do you see the pattern? None of these statements sound like fear or avoidance. They sound like responsible self-management. They are perfectly rational excuses that give you permission to stay safe, stay comfortable, and crucially, not create. But deep down, resistance is rooted in fear. It's the fear of failure, sure, but it's also the fear of success, the fear of judgment, and perhaps the biggest fear of all. The fear of the messy, unmagical middle. Think about the content you watch. It's the highlight reel. You see the polished final product, or maybe a quick, snappy montage of the creator effortlessly moving from idea to execution. That's the movie version of creation. The reality, the actual act of doing the work, is far different, and often, well, it's a bit crap. Creating feels awkward. It feels uncertain. It's the footage that's out of focus, the first draft that's full of cliches, the melody that sounds out of tune. It's the mundane, unrewarding work of revising, deleting, and trying again. When we first hit this stage, when we experience the work feeling bad or difficult, we stop. Why? Because the resistance whispers, "See? This isn't fun. This feels wrong. You must not be doing it right." If you were a real creator, it would flow easily. We mistakenly believe the process should feel like that movie montage. When it doesn't, when it feels like a struggle, we conclude that we aren't ready, aren't good enough, or aren't meant to do it. And this is resistance's most effective weapon. It convinces you that the discomfort you are feeling is a sign that you should stop, when in reality, it's a sign that you should keep going. The more times you loop through the inspiration treadmill cycle, consume, plan, don't start, feel guilt, consume more, the stronger resistance becomes. It builds self-blame, whispering, "You're lazy, you're a procrastinator." And what do you do when you believe you're lazy? You hide. You hide behind more research, more gear, and more planning. These aren't just ways to pass the time. They are all different masks resistance wears to keep you busy while avoiding the one thing that will break the spell, the work itself. You are not avoiding the work. You are avoiding the discomfort that the work initially brings. You are avoiding the quiet inner voice that says, "This is hard, and I might fail." But here is the absolute, non-negotiable truth of creation. Creating doesn't build readiness, it builds confidence. And confidence is the only antidote to resistance. You will never feel ready. Nobody ever is. The only difference between a successful creator and someone stuck on the treadmill is that the successful creator has learned to recognize resistance's masks and has chosen to act despite the discomfort. They realize that the feeling of awkwardness is not a signal to stop, but the normal, necessary first step of the process. It's time to stop listening to those voices in your head. It's time to find a way to jump over the gatekeeper, which means accepting that the first steps will feel messy, mundane, and maybe a little bit like failure. Because the reward isn't in the feeling of inspiration. The reward is in the action of creation. You now know that resistance is the master of disguise. It loves to stop you by making everything feel complicated or scary. If you're tired of letting perfectionism keep your best self on the sidelines, I've got a solution designed to bypass that gatekeeper. Ready to trade the perfection lie for real, consistent progress? My new ebook, 30 Days to a Better You, is a simple, practical guide that breaks down big goals into tiny, achievable actions. It gives you a 30-day roadmap to consistently beat resistance, one small step at a time, making sure your action compounds into real confidence. Stop waiting for ready. Download 30 Days to a Better You today. Find the link right below this video, and let's start moving forward. If resistance is the secret gatekeeper, then its favorite lie is the perfection lie. It's the voice that convinces you that there is a mythical state of readiness you must achieve before you are allowed to begin. We are groomed to believe this lie because everything around us, from professional cinematography to perfectly curated Instagram feeds, is the polished, final result. We see the stunning, high-contrast photograph and assume that the photographer on their first try captured that exact moment of perfection. We read the smooth, flowing essay and imagine the writer simply sat down and poured it out in a single, flawless stream. This consumption builds a deeply flawed expectation that creation is an act of delivery, not a process of discovery. When you finally sit down to create, your reality collides violently with this expectation. You frame the shot, and the light is terrible. You record your first lines of narration, and you sound stiff and awkward. You write your opening paragraph, and it's clunky and predictable. This is the moment of truth. This is when the resistance makes its final powerful move. It uses the gap between your perfect expectation and your messy reality to hit you with self-doubt. This feels unexpected. This isn't the right part of the process. You must not be good enough yet. Stop. Go learn more. But here's the game-changing secret. Creating actually happens before you're ready. The discomfort you feel is not a red flag telling you to retreat. It's the normal, necessary friction of starting. The first step of any creative act is not mastery. It is the acceptance of the messy, the mundane, and the unrewarding bits. Think about any skill you've ever learned. Did you learn to drive a car perfectly on your first attempt? Did you play the piano like a virtuoso the day you touched the keys? No. The initial stages were fraught with jerky movements, wrong notes, and frustrating halts. Yet, with creation, we hold ourselves to an impossible standard of instant fluency. We need to redefine what creation feels like. It's not the climactic movie montage. It's the awkward first draft. The messy bit is when your footage doesn't quite match the music dot. The mundane bit is spending an hour just naming files and organizing folders. The unrewarding bit is deleting a whole paragraph you spent 20 minutes writing because it just doesn't work. These are not roadblocks, they are the road. The perfection lie is designed to keep you waiting. It convinces you that you need the perfect lighting, the perfect idea, the perfect setup, or the perfect time slot. But here's the punchline. No one is ever ready. Not the creators you admire, not the masters of the craft, and certainly not you. If you wait until you feel ready, you will wait forever. I can tell you from my own experience with this channel. I wasn't ready when I started posting weekly. I had several false starts because I kept trying to feel more prepared. I thought one more tutorial would make the difference. It didn't. The only thing that changed was the date on the calendar. The truth is, even after posting content consistently for a year, I don't feel drastically different. I don't wake up thinking, yes, I am ready to be brilliant today. I still face resistance every week. But I'm not ready to stop either. Why? Because the continuous action, even when I'm not ready, has built an unstoppable momentum. Action compounds. Creativity compounds. Every clumsy edit, every awkward line, every video that flops. They are not failures. They are deposits in the bank of skill and confidence. They are the friction that slowly but surely smooths out the rough edges of your craft. If you allow the discomfort of the awkward, ugly first attempt to send you back to consuming and planning, you prove the resistance right. If you accept the discomfort and push through, you begin to rewrite the script. You prove that you don't need to be perfect to start. You just need to start to be perfect. Or at least better. The way forward is not to overhaul your life or find the magic key. It's much simpler and much more difficult. You must choose to act before your brain talks you out of it. You must launch the messy thing. You must start when it feels wrong. Because it's in that commitment to the unready, imperfect action that the spell of the perfection lie is finally broken. We've established the enemy, resistance, and its biggest lie, the perfection lie. We know that waiting for the feeling of ready is a trap, and that the discomfort we feel is just the normal friction of the creative process. So how do we finally get off the inspiration treadmill? How do we break the hypnotic spell of consumption and move into creation? The good news is that you don't need a massive, life-altering overhaul. You don't need to quit your job, book a remote cabin, or dedicate 6 uninterrupted hours a day to your craft. That's another trick of the resistance. It makes the solution look so big and intimidating that you never even try. The real answer is simple. You just need to act before your brain talks you out of it. And you do that by focusing on the power of the smallest possible movement. We need to introduce a new concept into your creative toolkit, the minimum viable action MVA. Think of the MVA not as a goal, but as a tiny, non-negotiable commitment to motion. It's the smallest unit of action you can take that directly advances your project and requires minimal effort and emotional commitment. The goal of the MVA is not to produce a masterpiece. The goal is simply to create momentum. When resistance sees a huge project, like make a 20-minute documentary, it fires every weapon it has: perfectionism, overwhelm, fear of failure. But resistance is surprisingly bad at stopping really small things. A minimum viable action should be so small that it feels almost silly, almost inconsequential. That's how you bypass the gatekeeper. If your big goal is to start a YouTube channel, your MVA is not write, shoot, and edit a full video. That's a 7-hour task. That's fuel for resistance. Your MVA should be something like this. Take your camera on a walk, even if you just shoot 5 random seconds of footage. Open your editing software and just import the files. Write the first 3 bullet points for an outline and nothing more. Shoot a 1-minute clip of yourself talking directly to the camera and delete it immediately if you want. Record 1 single voiceover line, even if it's hello. The power of the MVA lies in 2 things. First, it requires such a small energy investment that you can't use lack of time or overwhelm as an excuse. It's too small to fail. Second, and more importantly, It utilizes the phenomenon we call action compounding. Action compounding is the engine that breaks the treadmill cycle. It's the idea that a small action, once completed, drastically increases the probability of the next small action. When you take your camera out and shoot 5 seconds of footage MVA achieved, your brain registers a tiny win. That small win creates a momentary spike of confidence and momentum. The hardest part of any task is starting. Once the inertia is broken, your brain is far more likely to say, well, I already have the files imported, maybe I'll just trim the beginning. Or, I already wrote 3 bullet points, maybe I'll flesh out one of them. That's how action compounds. It's not a sudden surge, it's a gentle, persistent nudge. The cumulative effect of these tiny, non-scary steps is what eventually gets the big project done. The critical rule for the minimum viable action is this: making something is always better than making nothing. It doesn't matter if the video is blurry, the writing is cliché, or the music is out of time. The act of creation, no matter how flawed, is a direct, measurable blow against the lie of the inspiration treadmill. Consumption builds hesitation. Creation builds momentum. So, when you feel the familiar pull of resistance, don't try to fight it with a massive effort. Don't go back to the tutorials. Instead, focus on the smallest viable action and just get a tiny bit of motion. Point your camera at something, say something, shoot something. Because that tiny piece of action is the first step toward the most important element we need to cultivate: the feeling of competence and capability that only comes from doing the actual work. That element is confidence, and it is the subject of our final, crucial step. We've traveled the whole distance now, from the endless loops of the inspiration treadmill to the strategic power of the minimum viable action. We have identified the enemy, resistance, and learned to recognize its biggest trick: the lie that you need to be perfect to start. Now we arrive at the destination: confidence. If there is one single takeaway, it's this: the entire creative cycle hinges on the relationship between consuming and creating. And these two activities build diametrically opposed psychological states. When you are stuck on the inspiration treadmill, constantly consuming tutorials, masterclasses, and success stories, you are not actually building confidence. You are building its opposite: doubt, hesitation, and delay. Think about it. Every beautifully finished, professional piece of content you consume, while inspiring on the surface, also serves as an unspoken benchmark. It tells your brain, this is the standard. You are not there yet. Consumption convinces you that you are perpetually not ready. It tells you that you lack the necessary skill, the necessary gear, or the necessary inherent talent. It subtly, persistently, tells you that you aren't as good as you actually are, or as capable as you need to be. It's an endless passive absorption of other people's finished work, which only magnifies your own perceived inadequacy. The act of creating, however, fundamentally flips this dynamic. When you take that minimum viable action, when you point the camera, when you write the clunky first paragraph, when you hit export on the rough edit, you are doing something profound. You are creating evidence that you are capable. This evidence isn't perfection, it's proof of motion. Confidence isn't something you can buy in a course or absorb from watching a successful creator's morning routine. True, resilient creative confidence is not a precondition for starting. It is the direct, hard-earned result of having started. You build confidence not by feeling good, but by doing the work that makes you feel competent. Every time you finish a small task, you send a powerful signal to your brain: I said I would do this, and I did it. This is how competence is born, and competence is the bedrock of real confidence. You edited a 2-minute clip? That builds more confidence than watching 5 hours of editing tutorials. You finished the first draft, even if it's terrible. That builds more confidence than planning the perfect plot structure for a year. You uploaded the messy, imperfect video. That builds more confidence than waiting for the day you can afford the perfect gear. This is the beautiful compounding effect of action. Every completed step, no matter how small or how flawed, adds a sliver of confidence. As that confidence grows, the voice of resistance, that master of doubt and delay, begins to shrink. Its lies about perfection and readiness lose their power because you have tangible proof, right there on your hard drive, that you can execute. The only way out of the inspiration treadmill, the only way to silence the secret gatekeeper, is through the work itself. So, here is where we part ways, and where your real journey begins. You already have the inspiration. You already have the gear. You already know the structure of the problem. You don't need another video. You don't need more evidence, more inspiration, or more preparation. The time for consumption is over. The time for planning is complete. The only thing left is the action. Your task right now is to identify your minimum viable action. That one tiny, non-scary, non-negotiable step that gets you off the computer and into the arena of creation. You need to take the negative thought patterns. I'm not good enough. I don't have time. It's too messy. And you need to prove them wrong. Not with a grand gesture, but with a small, defiant act of motion. The cycle breaks now. I've said my piece. I'm going to stop this narration right here. You can pick up your camera, open your document, or plug in your microphone. I'll wait. Go create your evidence. Go build your confidence in motion. The messy work is calling.